Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you dialed in. So welcome to actually the first live stream of Frontend RheinMain. Hope you are as excited as we. Well, who are we? Well, the organization team is Katarzyna.
Hi, nice to meet you all.
And Josue.
Hey, hello, nice to meet you.
And me. I'm doing all this stuff. At least I started with doing this stuff, and I have cool people with me here today. So, and our speaker today is Juan.
Hello, everyone. It's good to see you here.
So, if you have heard of or used Tailwind already or checked out the links we posted on Twitter a few days ago, you kind of already used the so-called utility-first CSS concept. And today, Juan will take us on a journey about his experience with these concepts. So this is our agenda for today. As we have quite an international audience and some new members of our community, let me give you a short introduction to our community first. Then Juan will take over, and after his session, if there are open questions from you, we'll have time to cover them, so feel free to post them in the chat. And in the chat, please respect our code of conduct. We will post a link to this in the chat soon. Also, Juan will try to pick up your comments and questions during the session as well. Yeah, and for all meetup.com members attending today, we will raffle a surprise for one of you at the end. So stay with us. So, but first, what is RheinMain? Well, RheinMain is the name of a region in Germany, and its name relates to the two rivers called Rhine and Main, flowing through or around cities like Frankfurt, Wiesbaden, Mainz, and Darmstadt. If you hopefully can travel again easier in the future, step out of the plane in Frankfurt and discover some modern and old city architectures, beautiful nature, tasty wines, and lots of other sightseeing opportunities. So Frontend RheinMain is a community hub for front-end developers and friends in RheinMain. Started in 2014, our mission is to push knowledge transfer and connect web workers. So we started in 2014, and here I show you quickly some pictures in, like, say, 3D from those past times before Corona, where we really could meet in real together, which was really fun, and I hope this time will come soon again. So yeah, it was a nice thing, and feel free to reach out to us. So we have a website, frontendrheinmain.de. So you can follow us on Twitter and subscribe to our community on meetup.com and our upcoming newsletter. The link you'll find on the homepage. So the community is from us and for you. So it's a thing we work together on this whole thing. So if you have an interesting topic you want to share with us, or if you work in a company which does innovative stuff in the web, especially in the field of front end, then reach out to us. Thank you. And yeah, now I'll hand over to Juan. So enjoy the talk and have fun.
Nice. Jan, thank you very much for that introduction. I appreciate, and I thank you all for inviting me here, especially to start with Josue, who actually reached out to me and said, I need you to give a talk. So I had no choice, but then it was a pleasure to meet Jan and Katarzyna. So thank you very much for the nice welcome. My slides are being shared right now, so you can just put it on the screen whenever you're ready.
Yes, I will do now.
Enjoy.
Nice. All right. Can you still hear me? Jan, is it possible to put me on the side of the slides so that I can point
for sure
this? Yeah, super.
For sure.
Nice. So welcome everybody. Thank you very much for coming today. I can see that we have 20 people watching, 10 of which are my family. another 5 that are ourselves, and then maybe 5 people that are watching from Germany because they really like CSS. So great, thank you very much. But I'm pretty sure there are people from other places of the world as well. So if you're connected from somewhere other than Germany, we would like to know. Please send a message and let us know where you're connected from. That would be nice to see. And I will greet you all individually. We'll always do. So yeah. So let's get started. Utility first CSS. This is probably one of the hottest trends that happened last year. You probably noticed with something called Tailwind. And as you might have seen, a lot of people love it and a lot of people hate it as well. What I decided to do is to give it a try, just like I put in the description of the topic today. And I went through all different sort of sources from the primary one or the main one, which is, I would say, the article for Adam, which it's kind of in the main page of Tailwind, where he explains why it makes sense to use utility first classes in CSS. But I also came across some articles like this one that says, well, you probably regret using Tailwind, like the worst decision of your life. Or this one, like a little bit less aggressive, while Tailwind isn't for me. And honestly, I found some of the arguments very compelling. And I was like, now I'm puzzled. I wanted to just follow the trend and do what everybody else was doing, but it sounds like these people have really strong points. So what happened is that I decided to give it a try in 2 projects. One, a side project I was working on, or I'm working on, and a professional project at my company. And the outcome of that, it's quite interesting. It's going to be quite nice, and I hope that you like it. So I'm going to present that. And we have Mateo from Colombia. Thank you. Thanks for coming. And Deb Channel from Austria. Cool. And Manuel also, hi to you. Thanks for joining and for tuning in. That's great. So before, let me tell you a little bit more about myself. My name is Juan Herrera. I am from Colombia, which is located right there. If you don't know so much about Colombia, we speak Spanish as a native language, and we have people such as Cuadrado, Shakira, Juanes, and other not so relevant. In Colombia, when I was there up to 2 years ago, I used to run a community called Angular Medellin. So just like Jan coming out with this RheinMain community, I also feel him, and I understand what it is to build a community from scratch and make it flourish. So that's a feeling I share, and I look forward to do that more whenever I have the opportunity. But that's something we built back then, and it was something we were really proud of such community. But I will also run a conference called ANG Colombia, which Josue, which was in the stream a few minutes ago, was also key to make sure that it happened. So yeah, really cool stuff that happened there that I'm really proud of myself. So that's why I'm putting it in my slides, no other reason. Anyway, the thing is that, yeah, 2 years ago, what happened is that I decided to just completely move to a whole different continent, culture, and country, and then ended up in Austria, but not just for any reason, but because Parkside, a company located in Graz, decided to hire me. And I worked there as a front-end developer, where they're constantly requiring front-end developers. If you want to know more, just go to parkside.at, and they are not paying me to say this, unfortunately, but they should. In any case, I'm also a Google developer expert, so that means that if you ever have any questions regarding Angular or web technologies in general, you can totally ping me in Twitter or my Gmail or whatever, so that I can give you a hand. I'll be super happy to do that. So yeah, that's pretty much the presentation about me. But I'll tell you something that it's very honest and very real. It turns out that this presentation right now, it's not the first time I give it. It's the second time I give it. But there's something about it. It turns out that out of the many presentations I've given in my life, because I kind of enjoy doing this, I mean, not for any reasons, I have a whole setup here that looks kind of fancy. This was probably one of the presentations that went the worst. Like, you cannot imagine how bad the feedback I received when I first gave this presentation. Not in any negative way, but more like in a underwhelming way. It's like, yeah, Juan, did you really do this presentation? It's like, wait, really? Why? And I even took a screenshot of my face when I gave this presentation. And this is my face of shit, because yeah, people really didn't enjoy that presentation. So I figure that I should tell you this so that you don't have your hopes up, because the outcome might as well be the same. But I'll tell you something. I learned two things. First one, I learned to portray my message better, to be conveyed better. So you're going to see that in this presentation, and let's see if it has a different outcome. But second, I also learned that there's an important distinction that you always have to make when you talk about a trending topic like this one. Just like NGRX with Tailwind, if you don't want to use it, just don't. You don't have to. It's not necessary. You don't have to follow every trend out there. Which is what happened with NGRX like 2 years ago, right? Like, people were ranting about NGRX, how complex it is, but reality is that NGRX is only for, or Redux, it's only for a few projects, not for all projects. And I guess the same case might be for Tailwind. So my main message to give you here is that utility-first CSS, it's something that you probably don't need. Now, what you need, though, it's to know when it makes sense. So the next time you, as a full senior developer out there making the calls, and somebody asks you, should we use utility-first CSS, you know, or have the know-how when to say yes or no. Or maybe you, as a junior developer, get to say, well, I watched a guy the other day from Colombia telling the reasons when one should use utility-first CSS, and I think we should try it. So that's the outcome of this presentation, and I hope you leave the presentation in about 20 minutes with that goal in your mind. So yeah, let's get started. I came to realize that every presentation solves a problem, and when you state that from the beginning, it makes it clearer for the people to know what we're talking about. So I'm going to start with the problem here. What is the problem that utility-first CSS is solving? Why do you need it, if you ever do? Well, it's this one. This meme summarizes an eternal problem that it's been for generations, perhaps not generations, but for many years in the software industry, or perhaps in other industries. And that is that whenever we're working on a project, often we create a whole HTML, CSS, and a structure of a project that was designed one way, but often the design changes, and then you have something slightly different, sometimes quite different. And of course, what you need to do is just go back to code, just lower your head and do the thing you know how to do, refactor the code and do your thing. Which is fine, and this is not any designer's problem or being evil-minded. No, not at all. Sometimes it's the PO being evil-minded and changing stuff. No, not really. It's actually the client doing evil-minded stuff and then changing the requirements on a weekly basis and making everybody suck it up and then just go ahead and do it. But we cannot blame the client because their client is always right. So there's not much we can do about it. Well, actually, there are a couple things we could do about it. Sometimes when a project changes, the nature of a project that changes can be slightly mitigated, like the consequences can be slightly mitigated when you use, for example, in the design process, software like Abstract. Again, Abstract is not paying me for this. They should, but they are not. But Abstract, for example, brings an interesting perspective to the design process in which there is version control for the design they do, so that the process is more rigorous and changes are more carefully analyzed and thought through and so on. And I think this is quite interesting. Also for front-end developers, we have things like a Beat Deb or Deb Beat. Beat, yeah, it's called Beat, where you kind of do component design and crafting in an isolated way, just like a storybook, you should probably know. These processes helps mitigate the constant changes of requirements that it's common in almost every project out there. I haven't seen any project in my several years of experience where a project just stays like it was initially designed. It's not ever the case. And that's the problem utility first CSS tries to help with. They say, look, we've been doing things one way, maybe this other way can help as well. And let's see how it is. It turns out that when we're doing CSS, we actually expect CSS to be like this, like the Marie Kondo of CSS, right? Like we just tightly couple everything very well, and it's organized, and it's clear, and it's understandable, and it just scales, and it's maintainable. All these quality attributes that we look forward to having code. That's not the case. Honestly, I have to be very honest with you. When I go ahead and refactor code, I'm certainly much more comfortable refactoring TypeScript code than HTML or CSS, especially if it's a legacy project. I just don't go into a legacy project and it's like, oh, okay, there's so much HTML here, I'm gonna just remove it or change it from one place to another, just like that. Never, I'll never do that because I know it can break very quickly. The other way around as well. I just don't go and say like, the CSS class here, what is it for? Just remove it. No, and I would never do that. Of course, it will break something. It's there for a reason. Nobody knows, but it's there for a reason. And you move it out, you break something somewhere at some point, and you're probably going to pay for it. So that's the reality with CSS. It's expressed in this GIF right now, where I don't remember the name of this guy. He's from Family Guy. But yeah. So it's crazy. By the way, hi to Irvin. Thanks for joining, and everybody else who's watching. Thank you very much for coming today. I enjoy it. Yeah, if you're enjoying this, please stay. Don't leave. Don't leave. I'm really making an effort here to entertain you. Although my jokes are not good, but regardless. So this is what happens. This is what I believe. It's my reality of CSS. It might not be your reality. Maybe your CSS is super nice always, but not mine. Maybe not yours either. And then I came to realize after reading these articles I mentioned before that there are two approaches that you can go with CSS. It turns out, or I mean, there are probably many, but there are two that I would like to distinguish. It turns out that you can write CSS. Again, I'm going to point it that way. Oops, no, it's okay. CSS that depends. This is really hard. Okay, I'm not going to do it. CSS that depends on HTML, like in the left or your left. Or you can do HTML that depends on CSS. Did I just say the same thing twice? I don't know. CSS that depends on HTML or HTML that depends on CSS. That's the matter. That's the question here. That's what you're seeing. That's a comparison between the two. Andres, it's good to see you as well. So what you see is, for example, in the left, we have this class called greeting, where we say, hey, Frontend RheinMain, and then we just put a property, a CSS property into this class, and then it will be centered. And that's probably how you've been doing it for a while. I've been doing it like that forever. And then there's the right approach, which is where you define a utility class, in this case called text center, and then you put that utility class into the HTML. And if I ask you, I mean, I won't ask you because I know the answer, but if I asked you, which one do you prefer? Maybe all of you will say the left one because it's more semantic. It's much better. I mean, of course, it's self-documenting. Why would you ever try to mix the concerns there and put CSS and HTML together? I mean, just imagine when you have more classes, how dirty and ugly it will look. Well, let's see. It does look ugly. It does look dirty. Take a look. This is a more or less real example of how, if you follow utility classes, how the HTML will look. It will be super cluttered like it is in the right, whereas the left part remains clean, right? It remains like greeting, has its properties and stuff, right? But that's it. That's the topic. That's what I came here to talk to you about. And I'm still trying to figure out the reasons why you should use it. Sometimes I forget them, but like right now. But yeah, let's go back to the topic. What I'm trying to say is that that's the difference. That's the difference in approach. what you've been doing probably so far in the left one, and what utility first CSS is trying to suggest you to do. And I'll be honest, the first time I saw these, I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Why would you do such a thing? I even tried it. I guess I tried it in September last year. And I said, like, okay, what's the thing with this Tailwind thing? And I just tried it. And I was like, no, just no. This is very wrong. And I left it there. But then I went back in January or so, in December, and tried it. And it felt much better. But I want to tell you the whole journey. I don't just want to ruin it for you, spoil it for you. I just want to tell you how I reached to the conclusions that I felt like it worked for my projects, or for some of them, not necessarily all. The first of the questions that you might have is, or the first of the comments or concerns that at least I had was, okay, what is the difference with inline styling? I mean, just take a look at that. I mean, if you take a look on the right, you just have a lot of styles put into the HTML. I mean, if we can just put HTML like CSS directly in there, and that would not make any difference. But guess what? It's different. It's different, and I'm going to show you how. Let's look at the examples again. Look at the left, look at the right. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to actually reassemble them more equally by doing this. It turns out that the right one is not in any way inline stylings, because what happens is that when inline stylings, in styles, you have the possibility to put any value, to put any pixel, like, oh, 7.3 pixels, so be it, and you just put it there, which was the case before. In the left one, you could put any value, any hex color that you deem, whatever. But of course, you wouldn't do that. You would use variables. So that's how you would do it. And the right one also uses a design system, an underlying design system, so that you don't actually put any random values. So it's not like putting just anything in the CSS. That's the first and most important distinction. You're just not putting anything. You're putting very well-defined classes that you define within your design system, or just like variables or whatever, so that you just don't get the eternal and infinite flexibility that will be a lot of chaos. So yeah, so that's one important distinction. But then what are the benefits of this? You might be wondering, like why would you choose one over the other? Honestly, I found a lot online, but I don't necessarily resembled with or resonated with them. I was like, yeah, but no. And I was like, yes, but not for me. So what I did is that I tried to compile the ones I could defend, like the ones I could say, okay, that's true, that would apply for me. First one is the one I already mentioned. It's no random values, so it's not like inline stylings. It's just not going to happen. I mean, you just can't. It's not possible with utility first CSS classes. It might actually be more possible in the left one, because then you are open to put anything, even if you're using variables, right? But in the right one, you just simply can't, or at least it's not that straightforward. The second one that I like is that there are no dependencies. So what happens is that if you, let me remember this one. Yeah, what happens is that if you go to the right, to the deep, and then you remove something like a deflex, or remove something like border or whatever, the rest of the HTML is going to remain the same. You're just not going to fuck up the whole thing. I mean, in the sense of dependencies in CSS, which could be more likely the case in the left one, where you have where you can nest different selectors, or in Sass you can nest them even more, or whatever. So that's let's say, let's put it this way, there's not so much dependency in between the HTML, which brings an advantage. That is that you can, like I mentioned before, you can just go change styles and then be not so much as concerned as you would have been about breaking the whole HTML. So that's one that it's valuable to me, because then I can just very quickly change stuff without the fear of breaking other stuff that it's right next to it. Next one, it's the side effects. Another things that happen is that you know what? No dependencies or side effects. I don't remember the distinction. I think it's the same thing, just said twice. But by side effects, I meant the same thing. Like you can just freely go ahead and change those values, and then it's all right. It's fine. And Last one, no names. You no longer need to name stuff. Maybe that's a bad thing because the code is not documented. But sometimes it's also inconvenient to name stuff that doesn't need to be named or doesn't need a name necessarily, right? Maybe greeting is a good name, I would say so. But then if you need a wrapper just to put a border somehow, then you would need to create something like greeting and wrapper, which is like, well, that was not necessary, but I guess we have to do it because, and maybe you need to put another div on top because you want to achieve something else, then you need to constantly start renaming stuff. And maybe those names are not necessarily very accurate. And let's face it, naming stuff, it's difficult, isn't it? I think it's very difficult. And at some point, if you wrote CSS for a while, you already have these words memorized: wrapper, container, text field, and whatever, just these abstract names that you can just put everywhere you want. Or at least that's me. Having said that, of course, there are also issues with this. This is certainly not more readable than the left one, especially for a junior developer. You can think of writing code and then bringing a junior developer over and say, like, yeah, here's the HTML, just work on it. It's like, what? Like, what is all of this? And this is a simple example. A complex example might be certainly more complex to read. So I think that's a bummer. But we're going to take a look at more bummers later on. So to put this distinction at another level, I think these are just abstractions if you think about it. Greeting just happened to be an abstraction that has way more things to it, in the sense of it has more properties. Whereas the other ones are also abstractions, because remember, those are not values directly. You can just put a particular pixel. You can only use a set of properties that are very well defined within the whatever framework you're using, such as text center or tflex, right? So those are abstractions, are just smaller. And what a lot of people say is, look, abstractions make sense when you don't need so much flexibility, because the bigger the abstraction, the more flexibility you lose. So for example, with greeting, if it were to change tomorrow and so on, and you were to reuse it several places, you will have less flexibility to change that, especially if you start embedding or nesting CSS selectors. Whereas with the atoms, which is how some people call it, you have more flexibility. Now, of course, as well, you have to write them more often. You have to write in here, write in there, write in there, write in there, because you're using atoms. You're not using big abstractions. So there are pros and cons with each one of them. So remember, the approach is not, or let's put it this way. What CSS first utilities suggest is that is not saying that you use atoms only. It's telling you that you use atoms first, and then you can move on to bigger abstractions as you see fit. But it suggests there's a lot of value in the atoms, and then we're always or often relying on big abstractions where we lose flexibility. And you might be wondering, okay, Juan, that sounds cool, but then the question is, why do we need so much flexibility? Because of this. Yes, we have this reality in every project. You may say, no, I don't. That's great. You don't need to use it. But in my case, honestly, I see that almost on a daily basis or on a weekly basis. There's not much I can do about it. I don't have power over the roadmap of a project I'm working on. I can just do my tickets in Jira. So yeah, I need the flexibility to be able to say, okay, this card is not going to look like it was originally designed, and now I have to change it. Fine. There's no problem, because I can quickly go change some classes and then it will look like I want to. It's not like I have to remember what a bunch of classes in the CSS used to do and wonder if changing something there could affect something somewhere else, because that's no longer going to be the case. That flexibility was very valuable to me, at least so far. So far, I say, that's good. I like that. By the way, welcome everyone else who's joining. Thank you very much for coming. Maximilian, Mia, Emmanuel, Andres, it's nice to be here. Apparently we have 30 people. I think that's no longer my family. I think there's more people there than my family. So thank you very much for joining, chiming in. This is just the beginning. It's getting even more exciting because the next slide holds a surprise for you. A demo. Yeah, that's true. What I did is I took the time for each one of you, the 29 of you, because one of you already left. I just took the time to craft a, how do you call it, a code pen or whatever, where we have a utility framework. In this case, I'm using Bootstrap because I like it. And you don't get to decide. And what we're going to do is we're going to see how it would feel to use this utility for CSS, because honestly, I've never done it before September. So maybe for some of you, this is completely new and I would understand. So let's see how we do it. By the way, I just added Bootstrap with this link here. Nothing fancy there. All right. Let's see. So we have a hi there, a hello there. Let's start with the most difficult thing to do here. We're gonna just change this to the RheinMain. Great, it seems like the app is working. So now into more heavy stuff. What about if we put some background color to that? How would we do that? Of course, what we would do in a different approach is that we would create a class and then go to the class and add the properties there. But now we're going to do it inline. Let's see how it goes. The first, of course, we create a class. Yep. And then we're going to put a background. Guess what? There is an utility class for that where I can say BG. By the way, I think, should I put this bigger for the ones of you that are like me that can't see anything? Because I'm like that. Yeah, maybe this is better. So I'm going to put BG, which stands for background, and then I'm going to put primary. Voila. Great, it's right there. But the text doesn't have so much contrast. So how about we change the text color? Well, it turns out that I just cannot put every color of the world because there are a defined set of colors available. There's a class called TextLight that will turn the color of the text white or whatever you define. You can always go and change the design system under which this is defined for your specific project so that this kind of works. So far, so good. But how about if we add some padding? Well, guess what? When it comes to sizes, there are very well-defined sizes as well, from 1 to 5. 5 being the biggest size, like, I don't know, 24 pixels, and 3 being 12 pixels, and 1 being 4 pixels, just to give you a value. So I can say, for example, P-5. Boom, we have some padding going on there. That's cool, that's nice. But I think that's too much padding. So I'm gonna just remove it and put 3. Oops, I put 53, which of course is not valid. Okay, I put 53. Sorry, I just have a new keyword. I don't know how it works. Right, this is much better. Nice, so that's working so far. So we have background, color, and padding. What if we want to put some margin? Well, you probably guess it, it's with an M. So I just put M dash, and then I'm going to say, I don't know, 4. Would that be too much? No, that's kind of perfect. That's good. But let's say you want rounded corners, right? So you say, it turns out that there are a rounded finger I can put there. You say, yes, Juan, but I want this even more rounded. So I think there's a class called rounded peel that I can do. And you say, Juan, that's cool, but I want it centered. So it turns out that we can just say text and I really shouldn't have changed my keyword. Text center. Oh, beautiful. Design is my passion. No, honestly, it is. So that's what I'm going to fix it. I don't know how to fix it, but I'm not interested in doing much about it. Great. Beautiful. The peel you don't want to swallow. Hello, RheinMain. No, no, I got to change that to CSS, utility for CSS structs. But anyway, that's pretty much a quick overview on how it's done. Yeah, that's pretty much an overview of how it's done. And you say, well, that didn't hurt as much, and we're done, and the CSS doesn't look so ugly. Well, I agree with you. It's not so bad. Now, of course, you didn't know all those classes. I did. I had to go through the learning curve or learning those classes by memory, just for you. For the 27 of you, we keep losing people. That's fine. We're getting over soon. So let's move on. But yeah, that was a quick demo of how it is. Honestly, I liked it very much the first time I tried. I think it kind of makes sense. And I used it in 2 projects and I kind of enjoyed it. And that's a great question, the one that Matteo put right there. Like it looks good for prototyping, but for a stable component library, it seems overwhelming, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely, very much. And in fact, maybe you shouldn't use it, but maybe you should give it a try. At least that's what I did, and I liked it. It wasn't so bad. Maybe if your component library is too big, maybe another approach is better. And honestly, I don't know how often a component library would change, and especially since it's isolated, I don't think it's so bad. So maybe for that approach, Matteo, I would probably go for the other one. Yeah. So yeah, good point. Let's take a look at the rest of the slide. But yeah, I think I like what Matteo said. Prototyping makes sense, and if you're doing that, well, that wouldn't hurt to try, right? Okay, so let's see what else we have in the screen. So you might be wondering, because you're already asking questions. So guess what? I knew you would be asking questions, so that's why I brought some questions for you instead. What if I need to reuse the classes? Right? So what if you write text center and then you write background primary and then rounded, and then you say, oh shit, I just need to put this somewhere else. How evil is that scenario? Well, it turns out that nowadays, if you're really reusing a lot of those classes, you might as well create a component, because that's what we do. I mean, the front-end development, the core front-end development is done with frameworks. Some projects, nevertheless, do not use frameworks, which is fine. And I guess this wouldn't be the good case for a non-framework project. But if you're using something like Angular, React, Vue, Svelte, you can certainly create a component and then just stop duplicating the classes and just put it in the component, and then you're done, and then you're fine. So that will be the answer to that question if you need to reuse the classes. Now, you might be wondering, okay, Juan, that makes sense, but what if I need to reuse the classes in the same file? And I guess what? You got a point. You can just create a class. Remember, this is utility first CSS, not utility only. You don't need to rely on utilities uniquely. You can also create classes whenever you seem fit. So if that's the case, you can create the classes. And just like I said before, but I have to remember all those class names. That's true. There's nothing I can do about it. Everything has a learning curve. Yeah, it is what it is. So yeah. So I want to wrap it up because you see that you're getting super excited in the chat. That's super cool. Cheers to that. Yeah, I'm going to read those questions in a moment because I cannot do all these things at the same time. By the way, I hope you like the lights I have in the background. I put them because I thought maybe my presentation is not so funny. Then maybe you relax yourself with the waves of water of the lights. But yeah, I don't know. In any case, yeah, exactly. Thanks for bringing it up front so you can enjoy the lights and forget about my presentation for a moment. Regardless, let's wrap this up. Thank you, Jan. That's a great moderator. So pros of using utility first CSS. This is what I believe are the best pros, or yeah, pros. And there are only 2. So 50% of the pros are no surprises. No surprises. Like Radiohead's one of the best songs and best bands ever. No surprises in the sense that when you're writing HTML and CSS, what happens is that, like I said before, you are afraid, or I am always afraid of changing stuff. Maybe I'm a really bad developer and I shouldn't be afraid. Maybe you're too. Maybe we are all bad developers and that's what it is. Regardless, I like to be able to write the classes directly in HTML because I know that those classes won't affect anything else, won't have any side effects, and won't break the code anywhere else, at least not as much. Certainly. So I like that. I like that. And then as Matteo pointed out, yes, I think in that case, then for prototyping, it's very convenient because you can just quickly move around and change things here and there. So I like that. I like that very much. But maybe also for big projects, right? Like where you don't want to change in one line of code, freaking fucking something up. Second pro is the, I will elaborate on how I got the slides. Yeah, in a second, for sure. Second pro was no naming. Honestly, this is one of my favorite ones. From the bottom of my heart, having to not write all those classes unnecessarily, it's a great benefit already. You may say, yeah, but it looks much cleaner and better. Yeah, but it comes with cons, and I don't know, I don't want to. And sometimes, no, it's not my thing, or not for some projects at least. Now BEM actually helps a lot here in the sense, but still, just to be aware. Those are my two pros and the reasons I like utility first CSS. But once again, I would say it again, and I won't stop saying it. It's not the only approach I would use. I would also consider the other one for other projects. Let's take a look at the cons. Well, it's clearly the best or the worst cons of all. Not readable. I think that's the worst cons of all. It's just the readability. It's just too difficult for somebody new, especially again somebody that perhaps that is also it's complicated for the kind of people that's been in the industry for 20 years or 30 like Jan, or for people who is very new to the industry and has just been here for like a couple of weeks or months and is like, what are all those keywords that I can see in the HTML? What do they mean? What do they do? So yeah, I can see those. That'll be a thing, and it can get even more tricky when you add other stuff like responsive design and so. Now it's not like by putting in the CSS that complexity is going to go away. It doesn't go away. Just move somewhere else and maybe more manageable, but still. Having said that, maybe all of you came here not to talk about utility first CSS. All of you came for something more popular and more controversial, Tailwind. Now, I have to be honest, I haven't used Tailwind in any production thing myself. I use it for testing and I liked it, I tested it, but what I've used is Bootstrap mostly. Now, I did took my time to go through Tailwind to kind of figure out when would Tailwind make sense for me. So Tailwind, I think it makes sense, for example, when you need something performant, because Tailwind has purge CSS included in it, so that it removes any class that is repeated or that is not used, so that you get really a low budget in terms of the weight of the bundle. So that's really good. That's really nice. Another good thing that has Tailwind, as for example, as opposed to Bootstrap, because in Bootstrap, all you do is that you get, I don't know how big the file is, but let's say 200 megabytes, 300 of pure CSS that you use. You know, it's like if you just went to IKEA. I don't know if you know IKEA, but IKEA is like home center of Colombia, or that is like just the place where you buy your things for your house. But it's like going to IKEA and then buying all the possible toolbox that could ever exist. That might be Bootstrap in certain sense. Like you have this really big bundle where you use a lot of it, but a lot of it is also unused, but you're nevertheless shipping it to the client. Well, on the other hand, that's where Tailwind shines, right? Because what it does is says like, no, we're going to tree-shake all of that and we're just going to use what we really need. So that's nice. Also, in comparison to Bootstrap, then we have the variants. That is that in Bootstrap, it's not possible to do hover, active, or responsive design stuff. Yeah, at least not very, oh, there's a spider. At least not very thoroughly or really flexibly, if that's a word. Whereas in Tailwind, you got a lot of variants and you can do plenty of stuff with it. I haven't tried it. I'm curious. I'm excited to try it one day. I want to see how it feels. And if I say it sucks, I'll make sure I tweet about it. But yeah, I still have to give it a try. And third one that I think, and last one that I think Tailwind has over Bootstrap, that it's worth trying, is the dark mode. That's just another variant, but I think it's cool. You know, it's like cool kids, you know, like, yeah, we have dark mode, you know, very cool. So I think that's nice. Now, cons of Tailwind, and to wrap it up, because I think you're exhausted already a little bit, maybe. Juan equals JS, lights equals CSS. Great. Yeah, that's a great analogy, Mia. Anyway, and guys, can you be serious? We're trying to do hard work here, and you just make me laugh. Anyway, cons. I think one of the things that suck about Tailwind is the build tool. ends that you have to actually build the thing. It's not like you could just write the CSS and the browser will just interpret it and read it and understand it. No, not anymore. You have to put a build tool into it, probably with Webpack or God knows what else. And that sucks, especially for those like us who do not want to mingle with Webpack stuff and then try to debug it when it fails. That sucks. But maybe it is what it takes. That's the cost of it. Or maybe you want to give it a try. I don't know. Things like React, Vue, and I think Angular upcoming as well will have default support for this, or not default, sorry, that was not the right word. We'll have support for this. Like you can easily integrate those things. So that will be possible. And you don't have to do that manually, but it's just a caveat to consider. And another one, that's perhaps the only original part of this presentation that actually came from me. There is no big core behind it, behind Tailwind, that is. Because one of the things that I try to consider whenever I'm making a decision about the tool to use, it's many things, whether if I like it, if people are using it, if it's popular, whatever. But also who is behind it, whether it's an evil corp or a good corp. I want to see also, I think corp support is necessary. We need money to support the engineers actually building those stuff. And there's no big corp like there is for, I don't know, React or for Angular, where you have these big corporations behind putting in money to make sure it works. Now, of course, the people doing Tailwind are building a business out of it and they're making sure it's sustainable. But yeah, just take into account, you never know when they might be broke and then might not support it anymore and nobody does and you're fucked. But yeah, just take it into account. I see a couple of questions. So guess what? I just say, let's finish this presentation now and let's address those questions. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed, at least enjoyed the lights like me and it. And if you enjoyed the presentation, I would also appreciate that. Looking forward to all the followers that I'm going to get out of this presentation. Not really. Thank you very much. Thank you. That's good. Let's go with the comments.
First, thanks, Juan. It was a great session with you.
Nice.
Yeah. So, maybe I actually have also maybe a question. I also took a look at Tailwind, but didn't do really hands-on stuff yet. And the main argument against it, in my head at least currently, is like this big, like, let's say, mess of classes in the markup, like you mentioned, and I experienced lots of situations where I have found it quite useful to kind of bundle those classes with a specific semantic meaning for what I need to do there, like a container thing or whatever. Because reading and identifying classes is hard in the markup. But that's my personal maybe concept that or way of doing CSS, that I like to have the HTML as lean as possible. And of course, naming things also with this BAM methodology thing is really also a challenge by itself. But how could this be condensed in a way? So maybe this relates to the question Manuel had, like, is there a way, maybe even after the build step, to not have that many classes in the output, or what's your opinion on this? Did you experience like the same, or I'm curious?
So let me see if I get your question correctly. So what you mean is when you compile it, when you compile it, that you don't get all these repetitive classes in the final bundle. Is that what you mean, or you mean something else?
Yeah, for example, also like the tree shaking thing, like removing classes which are not needed in the CSS bundle, but also in the resulting markup, like that there is maybe some magic behind where Tailwind identifies some common patterns and bundles these for the production build, at least, under some shorter class names. Is there anything like this, or on a roadmap maybe?
No, that's actually a great question. I don't think so, because I think I would have seen it. Maybe there is. But no, I don't think the build tool is doing this at the moment. but now that you mention it, I think it makes sense to consider it. It doesn't sound like a bad idea at all. Yeah. Maybe, why not, right? Yeah. Nice. I like it. And I have to admit that I also like the question, the question, which I thought it was a suggestion, but it's also good. How about if you go through utility first CSS for Michael, just to play around, check things out, kind of get it right, and then you switch to semantic classes upon your results. So that is what you suggested, but just manually, which is very interesting. Yeah, it could also be. Yeah. I like that. Josue, how do you like it?
I really like your talk. The people is really happy. I think that they enjoyed. I don't have any question right now, but I don't know if someone in the chat want to ask something.
Yeah, I think I saw a couple of questions.
Yes.
Let me see.
Yeah, I found a question. So where is it? Oh no, I missed it.
They're doing things that need to miss.
So actually, maybe we can pick up the question from Matteo. He said utility first looks good while prototyping, but for a stable component library seems overwhelming, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It can be, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, like what we said, maybe if you have a more stable environment, then a semantic approach would make more sense. Right? Yeah, I think that's a good question. There's a question from Manuel, or a comment. Okay, no, that was a comment.
What I really like is that it's a new approach to think, because we also are developing these websites and we think like engineers, and sometimes we forgot the design. And it's the first time that I see this, and it's really easy to see the point that you only need to write some classes that identify that, okay, I need more padding or round or whatever. And one comment in the chat was, maybe it's easier for the juniors to get into this website design, because if you try to read the CSS in the regular way, you see these big files, huge files, and you never understand where is the header or what header, because maybe you repeat yourself many times. And it's really interesting, this approach.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. Yeah. Yeah, regarding the question, yeah, I see a question from Manuel Fella saying, is there anything that will compress the style tag length during the build? Just thinking about the bundle size and the laziness of coders. Sorry, the class tag, not this. Yeah. I think no. No, the answer is no. I don't think there is such a thing, but still, really valid point. I think, yeah. I think that one of the points that they try to make is saying, look, but when you do gzip, which is meant, or broccoli, which is meant to take, like, strip away repetitive things, it's actually very convenient to use utility for CSS. But I think your point is still is valid, and it just makes sense maybe for the bundle. Maybe for debugging, it can be complicated, but for production, yes, it makes sense. Absolutely. Nice. It seems like it's Petra is asking, would it make sense to use utility classes only in the CSS to extend semantic classes? Use utility classes only in the CSS to extend some. I'm not sure if I follow the question, or I cannot picture it. How would that be? Maybe Petra, if you can perhaps expand a little bit. I want to answer the question. Yeah, Marcus got a point. You can reduce the CSS size with purge CSS, which just strips away anything that is not used. But yeah, it seems like there are plenty of ideas where you can go even further to improve that.
There's also a question from Michael. I hope we didn't cover it yet. Do you sometimes use this utility-first approach just to play around and check things out and build traditional semantic classes upon your results?
Yeah, no. The answer is no. I haven't done it. But I think, like we suggested before, I think it makes sense. Yeah, it would. Yeah, it would make sense. It seems like the conversation is around this. Go prototyping very quickly with these classes that, as Josue stated, it also convenient for perhaps junior that are learning. And then once you have something more solid, then you can perhaps swap, replace something for semantic so that it's readable, so that it's easier to understand, easier to look at the code and the whole thing. Yeah, that's interesting. And Mia still wants to know about the lights. No, so I'll tell you the truth. I'll tell you the truth. This is what happened. I like to meditate, and I'm not like most millennials. I don't have money for Headspace, so what I do is that I bought these lights on Amazon. They're called Galaxy Lights. Galaxy Lights. That's how you can look it up. The ratings all of them suck, but I just picked one. And it was not so bad, honestly. It's really cool, really relaxing, and yeah. And I figured, well, maybe I can use it for the background of the presentation. Wouldn't hurt. I mean,
nice.
Yeah. So.
I actually didn't think that there is someone in this live stream today who has maybe nicer lights than me. I put some effort into my background lights to have some warm, cozy lights because it's evening in Germany, and but your lights are totally awesome. Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Thank you. But I mean, Josue has a cat in the background.
Yeah.
What can be better than that?
Yeah.
Oh, lots of cat content here. Yeah, cool. Katarina, where's your cat?
she's not here, you know.
She's
I'm in my private space. Okay. It could be cold, so maybe next time.
Yeah. I saw another comment from Petra, and I think that she's trying to say that maybe you have this kind of tools like less or SAS, and you can create a semantic class and use this order to make it more clear in the HTML. I don't know if she's trying to say that.
It's like harmony and define them in one place. And so the class is. So yeah. Now understand. So yeah, this is what she means. She's saying, look, what if you use semantic classes like greeting, right? But then in the CSS, instead of using what is it called? Just random values, you use actually the atoms that you would have used in the HTML. Yeah, totally. Great point. Actually, so yes, Tailwind in particularly offers this possibility with a thing called apply, that it's meant for this purpose, because they also acknowledge that this was the case sometimes. So it is possible. They say, look, sometimes you're just repeating these things, so you can just create a semantic name with apply, and then just put those things there, and then it will just work. So in that case, yeah, I think that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What I was thinking, when maybe Tailwind also can serve like a bridge in a collaboration phase with designers. In the past, I experienced quite often that designers and front-end developers are quite disconnected, still in Agile and Scrum time. So designers do their stuff in PSD and then throw it over the fence, and then the front-end guy starts somehow identifying what the designer wanted to do, and even maybe in older times slicing out stuff from the file and putting it together in the browser again. I always strive to connect the designers more to, and also the front end developers more to the designers in a way. And often designers are really afraid of CSS. I myself are quite often also afraid of CSS, although I'm doing it quite long. It's really, sometimes you do not know how the browser behaves, and yeah, that's always some tricky stuff waiting for you. But also on the other side, I do not know maybe that much like a designer on how to use Photoshop like a wizard and such things. So I was thinking that could Tailwind like be this bridge that once the designer learned how to use these classes provided by Tailwind, then could we front-end developers kind of allow the designer to contribute on our markup especially in like the first project phase and prototyping phase, so that we allow designers to style directly in HTML. It's like maybe a bit too naive thing currently, but what do you think about this? That Tailwind not only serves like a tool for us engineers, but could maybe be a bridge to onboard designers, or at least to get them some more understanding of our technical world. And in my experience, there are some designers who are willing to understand the front end ups and downs better, to make better deliverables for us, etc. So I think maybe this could be an opportunity also, because they do not really need to learn the CSS totally from scratch and such things. So they just need to learn this. Of course, they need to learn like layout concepts a bit, and that's also opportunity for us engineers to teach them maybe a bit from our world. But when they only need to learn like these I don't know, hundreds of classes, or have this reference at hand when they work together, maybe we could bring them closer to front end as well. That was what I'm thinking, and I'm really trying to maybe find a project or whatever to try this out once in the future. But what's your take on this?
No, I like it. I like it very much. Honestly, I think designers are increasingly, or let's put it this way, the design process is increasingly getting closer to front end, in the sense that, like before, they would just design something and give us a PNG, and then we have to recreate the whole thing. Nowadays, it's a different thing, right? Like we just get a spec file where we can take a look at how many pixels actually are between the two, and then it would even generate the CSS classes that we would need. Of course, those CSS classes don't use variables. Those CSS classes don't use, or at least if I recall, no, they do use variables already. But certainly, it makes a lot of sense for the designer to design a system, like a design system, and then that the tool only allows the designer to actually stay within the system design, within the design system. So, for example, if we want to put some padding, it's not like the designer can say, okay, I'm going to put 7, and here I'm going to put 11. It's like, what? No, you just cannot do that. You can either put 10 or 6 or 4. That's what the design system allows for. And I believe what happens is that the tools give perhaps a lot of flexibility nowadays, and then that's why some designs are inconsistent. But then if we did that, then what happens is that it will be rather straightforward or easy to transform that design system that is defined with specific sizes and measurements into utility classes that then the developer will just use, or perhaps doesn't even have to put there, because then, as you mentioned, maybe the whole design software can already export in HTML with the utility classes all there ready. And it was like amazing. So yeah.
Cool stuff for your brain to think about. Actually, that's a really nice discussion. I like.
Yeah, like Manuel said, Tailwind for Sketch. Exactly.
This would be it. I need to check it. Yeah. Still there's a question from Miss Mia.
Yeah.
Yes. How does it work together with component libraries? Doesn't it get overloaded? She asks. So.
Yeah, I mean, what happens with component libraries, if I understand correctly, is what happens is that you have, for example, a button, right, or a card, and then what you do is that you have a very well-defined hermetic place where you just put the HTML necessary for that component and the CSS necessary for that component. So I guess in such cases, you don't need that flexibility because it's not like that's going to change too much, especially because those are very well-defined, like molecules, to put it that way. So I don't think using utility classes would add too much value. I mean, you can still do it. I don't necessarily think it can become too overloaded. I think it can still be fine, but maybe in such cases, semantic classes make more sense because then the code is documented and it's fine. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool. So, we have 1 hour already, which is really cool, and I'm happy that still 18 people are here. Maybe the others, I'm not sure. Yeah, they missed quite a nice discussion. So, let's see. Okay, there's a comment again. So they are well defined, but we do need to customize constantly.
I see.
She's guilty of creating custom components for padding alone. I can feel it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe in that case you can give it a try. What I would suggest, Mia, is that you give it a try and see how it feels. I mean, remember that you can use both side by side, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue. And maybe start with Bootstrap, which has a less of a, like, it's easier to kind of go with it because then you just put in the project, should be fine. And then if you like it, to go to Tailwind. Yeah.
Cool. So, yeah, I think we kind of can end the official session here. Thanks again, Juan. It was really wonderful session, very entertaining and insightful, and I could really feel constantly your passion for this talk and this topic, and yeah, it was really great to have you here. So
thank you very much.
Hopefully not the last time. I'm sure we will come up with some nice topic, not only on CSS maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nice.
Cool.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for showing up and for the audience for coming today and listening to these. I appreciate your participation. It's really participative. I have to say, that's really good. LinkedIn, Juan Herrera, I guess you can find me, but just on Twitter you can also ping me and then we can connect. And yeah, and to all of you, thank you very much, Jan, Josue, and Katarzyna for your contribution and for hosting the whole thing. So
yeah, it's a pleasure.